If I come into your house and I take your family out of your house and I put them into the garden shed and I kill, God forbid, half of your family and I cut off your water and I poison your water, 95% of it becomes undrinkable, and I keep mowing the lawn as Israel basically claims, and you are not allowed to even leave that shed unless I allow you to do that. It's not complicated, Josh. That's a huge injustice.
That's not the comparison that was being made, though.
It's exactly what's happening there, Josh.
You're talking about moving to another place. Even the routes out of Gaza are being bombed. These people have been given a choice, the Palestinians. The choice is die, and that's the only choice.
When people like the Prime Minister or the President of Israel says that we are fighting human animals, this is how they view these people. This is what justifies the mass killing of these people.
Just like Israel doesn't want these people, Egypt and Jordan also don't want these people.
No, that's not
incorrect.
true. That's
Incorrect.
not true. That's incorrect.
There's a talking
think they
point
want
here,
them.
which is
No, that's incorrect.
I'll answer the let
They
me
wanted
answer the
them,
claim.
they would.
No, Josh.
Let me
no,
answer
Josh.
it. Let me
I'll
answer.
tell you why that's incorrect, Josh.
Abbas.
Yeah,
No, before you go into that, Ijaz, do you know how many million Palestinians are already in Jordan and in Egypt and in Syria and all of these other countries?
they're
Millions
not
of
being
them.
given citizenship.
Listen,
they treat them
Josh,
as second-class citizens. That's not
Josh,
right.
no, Josh,
That's not right.
Josh, they have already exiled themselves, many millions of people from Gaza. The point is, Josh, they're not stupid. They know that if they open their doors to to people of Gaza, the Palestinians, they will be forced out of Gaza by the Israelis. They will be pushed into those areas and they will never get the right of return, just as Israel at the moment operates an apartheid state. Because what Israel does, Josh, is you can be born in New York City, never stepped in Israel, but because you are Jewish, you can have a life in Israel. You can get Israeli citizenship and rights to land. And if you are a Palestinian who lived there for generations, for thousands of years, and you have basically gone out of that country and you do not have the right to return, Josh, even if you lived in there for thousands of years, right? Generationally. So this is an apartheid system where there's one rule for a particular religious group, which is Jews, and there is another law for the right of return. And even if you're a Jew, by the way, Josh, and you convert to Islam or Christianity, you're kicked out, you're thrown out. You don't have the right to return, Josh. That's the point.
Well, I just want to make one point, if that's okay. So the mass expulsion of the people to other places, either with so convincing other people to take them and forcing them out because of war, or killing them, or however you expel them, you clear that land. This is the definition of genocide.
Yeah,
so saying to a people, saying, why doesn't so and so take these people or so take those people? Because they'd be aiding and abetting the mass expulsion of the population from where they are.
You know, one last thing also,
Doctor. Just to finish my point, Abbas. So the same question could be returned the other way. If there is so much difficulty for the Israelis where they are, then why don't they go to another place? Go to Uganda, or go to New Zealand, or go to New York? Why are all these countries not taking them? I mean, the same question the other way around. It just sounds odd when you say it, because
but also, Imran, sorry, before Ijaz, you come in again. Professor Norman Finkelstein was asked this very same question, by the way. Why don't these Arab countries take them? And you know what he said, Josh? He said in the Second World War, nobody wanted the Jews. The Americans didn't want them. The Europeans didn't want them. Nobody wanted them. So what Professor Norman Finkelstein said is that, are you now saying that the Jews were not deserving of getting a home or being accepted elsewhere? Were they so nasty? Were they so horrible that nobody wanted them? Is that your argument?
No, that's not my argument.
But that's what I'm trying to say to you. That's how he turned the argument.
What I'm trying to say. Look, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the fault of the misery of Palestinians, although a lot of it can be thrown at Israel's door, not 100%. Jordan and Egypt definitely have a part to play. I don't understand for the life of me why, for the 20 years when Jordan and Egypt occupied the West Bank and Gaza, respectively, they didn't open the option of citizenship for the people living there. I don't understand it, and I also don't understand why the people who have been living in Jordan and Egypt as refugees since then have also not been allowed to take up citizenship, and the same in Lebanon and Syria. I don't understand why that is. I think that if what Israel is doing is apartheid, that should also be considered apartheid, because it's one rule for the native Egyptians and the native Jordanians and the native Lebanese and the native Syrians, and a different rule for the Palestinian refugees and their children and grandchildren, who are also considered.
So it's not the same. Why? Because this all goes back. If one reads about the 1984 war, 1948, and then the 1967 law, it is the decision of the pan-Arab states in that region for the establishment of a Palestinian state. And in order to have a Palestinian state, there must be the right of return, so that those Palestinians displaced return to that land, that they don't have the option of becoming, what's the word here, of joining the Jordanians and the Egyptians and completely assimilating to become Egyptians and Jordanians. Because the objective is not to give them, not to make them a group of another country, but rather to facilitate their return to their nation upon which their state can be built. So it was agreed by the PLO and other organizations with the Arab governments that in order for Palestinians who are displaced to establish their state, the easy and most direct solution to this is that Palestinians must first return to their state and live there and return to their homeland. So they're not.
This is deeply immoral.
Josh, make your last comment and let Imran make his
one other point.
Yeah.
So imagine.
Can I finish my thought?
Yeah, sorry, Josh.
Guys, I've been so long. Yeah. So I lost my train of thought, but the point is simply this: it's not that the Egyptians and the Jordanians don't want the Palestinian people to come into their nations and to assimilate there. Rather, it is the case that the Palestinian people, the diaspora, wherever they may be, they are Palestinian citizens in waiting for the right of return to establish their state. That's all it is. By giving them citizenship on a humanitarian legal basis, it would mean that they have a right to return to another country, which is not Palestine. Therefore, there isn't an urgent need for Palestinians to return to their original homes. So the reasons that they're not given citizenship in other countries is not because people don't like the Palestinians. It's because if they do give them that citizenship, Israel can turn around and say, look, they have a home to go to, let them stay there. Simply what it is. So we see it for what it is. Why can't you is the question.
Does this not look to you like utopianism? Because surely they know by now. It started in 1948. Right? Hold on a second. Hold on. Let me finish my point.
Before you move,
hold on. I let you finish. Hold on a second, please.
I don't want to move on. You told me you didn't understand why, so I want to stay on that point.
I haven't finished my question.
Let's just stay on the question. Just 10 seconds, right? Just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. I promise you'll get your time. You said to me that you didn't understand why the other countries don't take Palestinians in. I've now given you the answer, as did Abbas and Imran. So do you say now you understand why that is the case?
I'm saying now specifically about those who are already there, right? The ones who are already there in Jordan and Egypt are not being given citizenship. And you're saying that the reason why they are not giving them citizenship is so that then Israel will say, you have a home to go to, now I'll give you even more, right? So that's what you're saying. And they don't want to do that because they say, well, we want there to be a Palestinian state instead. Surely they know by now that it's not going to happen, right? Israel is way more powerful, right? Israel is way more powerful, right, than any of these guys, right? And surely it would be.
They should give up. Is that what you're saying? they should give up.
No,
let him finish.
What I'm saying is, look. I think we all know that, for example, there's never going to be a Kurdish state, right? Right? Looking somewhere else, right? Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria will never allow there to be a Kurdish state. It's obvious, right? We know that there's never going to be that Mali will never allow an Azawad state, right? None of these things are going to happen. It's obvious because you have a much more powerful country and a very small and weak, less powerful group of secessionists at this point. Now, at the beginning of the conflict, it wasn't secessionism, obviously. It was two groups fighting for control of a land that the British had just left or were in the process of leaving.
Not really, Josh.
Well,
no.
That's the way I see it anyway. But that's a minor point of what I'm saying. The moral thing to do now would be to ask the people, ask Palestinians living in Jordan and Egypt, do you want citizenship here? Give them the option. Because why should they be told, well, you're just going to have to wait for this pie in the sky idea that one day we're going to beat Israel at last and you're going to have your state? So it's just unrealistic, immoral. It's not going to happen. Do you honestly think Israel's going to let itself go? I don't think so.
So here's the thing. I like this type of thinking, Josh, because this comes from a kind of like supremacist thinking, that it's a pie in the sky type of dream that the Palestinians will never have their state. To be clear, they have the Palestinian Authority, which for the large part functions like a state and is internationally recognized. Whether Israel wants a second state along their borders, whether they want that or not, is irrelevant because the population density of the people at the borders demands a solution immediately. The larger the population grows in the West Bank and in Gaza, at some point, they have to move beyond those borders. It's a numbers game. And so Israel cannot always be in the position of trimming the grass and keeping the population low, of mowing the lawn, right? Understand the point then. The point then is that, right? So the point then is that Israel has a question to ask itself. Do we either implement the two-state solution, which allows us as a people to work with the Palestinians, or do we keep it as a one-state solution and we try to get rid of the Palestinians one way or the other? The first option, two-state solution, I think it's reasonable. I think it's possible it can be established. The second solution will either lead to a genocide of significant proportions or a humanitarian crisis, which will require international intervention. One of those two options is bad, really bad, and the other is a chance for peace. And I'll just point out here that the Israelis should be willing to accommodate the creation of a Palestinian state, because the creation of a Palestinian state stabilizes the Palestinian people. There is no need for guerrilla warfare. There's no need for fighting between Jews, Arabs, Israelis, Muslims. That need for fighting is gone because the basis of the fighting has been removed. Simple as that.
And also, Josh, very quickly, Imran, no, 1 second, Josh. Dr. Imran, I'd like you to come in there if you'd like to, because we've spoken for quite a while. And the thing is,
but Justin,
I really want to get...
I don't want it to see that we've spoken so much and Josh doesn't get a response. And so I finished my point. Let's get Josh in, then Dr. Imran, if that's okay.
That's fine. But Josh, one of the things that somebody's in the comment has raised as well, which I was going to raise as well, should the Jews have just given up the Warsaw Ghetto? Should they not have fought the Germans, even though they knew that they were unarmed and they wouldn't actually be able to overcome the Germans? Should they have just given up and conceded that they were going to lose, or should they fight the way they did fight? By the way, many Jews did actually fight, didn't they?
I think it's a totally different situation.
Well, so you say. Okay,
just
finish your point, please.
These people in the Warsaw Ghetto knew that they were doomed.
Yes.
And they knew that they were either going to go to their deaths in the gas chambers like sheep, or they could die fighting as heroes.
So that's exactly what the Palestinians. Josh.
I was making.
That's exactly what the Palestinians are thinking.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Very, very different to the point that I was making.
Yes, Josh.
About Jordanians and Egyptians allowing citizenship to the Palestinians already living.
I don't even know. Listen, Josh. You know what it is? Look, Josh. I don't even know why we're talking about this, because if I come into your house and I take your family out of your house and I put them into the garden shed and I kill, God forbid, half of your family, and I cut off your water and I poison your water, 95% of it becomes undrinkable. If the United Nations in 2020 say that it's going to be unlivable, that shed that you're in now is unlivable, okay, and I go into your shed and I keep mowing the lawn, as Israel basically claims, and you are not allowed to even leave that shed unless I allow you to do that, right? It's not complicated, Josh. That's a huge injustice.
That's not the comparison that was being made, though.
It's exactly what's happening there, Josh.
That's not the comparison that was being made.
Exactly what's happening there, Josh.
When I was accused of saying, oh, the Palestinians should give up, when I was being accused of saying that, what I was actually saying was that the Jordanians and Egyptians should allow citizenship to
irrelevant point.
Hold on.
Irrelevant point.
Living there. And
it's irrelevant.
You're now saying, well, that's just similar.
No, Josh, it's irrelevant because what should be Josh? It's irrelevant because what should be happening is it's irrelevant because what should be happening is that Israelis should stop bombing and killing the Palestinian people and stealing their land. That's the fundamental issue at stake. That's what needs to be resolved.
That's not the issue that I was talking about.
Worrying about what the Jordanians might do or the Egyptians might do is not the issue here.
So just to sort of finish off, so I think
anyway,
the point about
before you cut in there. I personally, when looking at potential solutions, I think that neither the one-state or the two-state solution hold any water at all. I don't think either one's going to work. I think the only possible solutions are a binational state, or a breakdown into a federal or localized system in which each town, village, district of cities have their own autonomy, so that the people of each place can decide. And I think that would be probably the best solution. But of course, neither one's going to happen because I don't think politicians on either side actually want peace.
It's not.
I agree. I actually agree that politicians, they're terrible at this. And with respect to whether the one-state solution or the two-state or the solution you've just proposed, is it reasonable? In the long run, I don't think it is feasible. I understand that the Israelis want to have a Jewish ethno-state, a state for Jewish people specifically. I don't see that being complementarian with a Palestinian existence, right? One excludes the other. To me, if the state can redefine itself like it recently did, and it removes the definition of it being an ethno-state, but simply a democratic state in the Middle East, and Palestinians are given the right to return, and they get some kind of like how China has like the SAR, semi-autonomous regions. They have that freedom to somewhat self-govern themselves. I think that would be brilliant, except there's one big problem, and Josh pointed to it at the end. It's the Likud founding charter. Likud, which I think Benjamin Netanyahu, he's from that party, I could be mistaken. Okay. In their founding charter, I think in 1977, the statement that they made was that they would not accept this, any rule of any party between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea other than one of only Israeli sovereignty. Unless that thinking is changed by current Israeli politicians, what we are going to see, Josh, unfortunately, is a continued genocide of Palestinian civilians. And that, for me, should be a thing that both you and I agree should not occur. Abbas, Imran, I don't know if they disagree with me, but I think the view of all should be and is that non-combatants should have safety. There should not be a war in that region. We can live and get along well with each other, but the politicians, like you mentioned, are really making that process difficult. And while we sit here and talk about things like this, Palestinian child dies. I think it's something 2 children per 1 minute at this point. For me, Josh, that's the reason I'm speaking out. Children, I don't want them to die for something that would cause even greater suffering in the near future. Let's save them today. Let's save them from now. And you, as a member of the Jewish community, by being here and speaking with us, are part of that dialogue. to help make that change realistic on the ground.
This
So
dialogue,
go ahead, Josh.
this dialogue, I'm afraid to say, is not going to have the slightest bit of impact. Neither is any dialogue, nor is any protest. No, not a single protest every Shabbos, Saturday as people call it. All the protests never going to work. Not a single one will have the slightest bit of impact, and we all know it, because why would it have any impact? The politicians in the Middle East are going to carry on making the decisions that they're making because it's in their interests to make the decisions that they're making. Anything that happens in this country or in whatever other country, it's completely and utterly irrelevant. All the
I disagree, Josh.
I disagree. It does. Sorry, I need to get Dr. Imran in, and we need to get Autumn on. Sorry, she's been waiting a long time, and we need to, be closing the stream shortly. So I want to get Dr. Imran's thoughts onto this before we get the last guest on, please.
Yeah, before we conclude, Josh, if you're willing, I think we should have another live stream about this topic specifically. And you can bring some Jewish friends as well. Let's have an open, frank conversation publicly about these things of, I think, international interest.
Right.
Yeah, I think you covered the point that I was going to mention anyway. But I was just was going to say that the assumption being made here is that the Palestinians who are refugees in the surrounding countries in their millions actually want the citizenship of those countries. Actually, what they want is the right to return to their lands that they were expelled from. And so this is not the thing that should be done is to make their refugee camps, etc., as livable as possible. And that's something that is being actively engaged in. The other thing is actually the solution that what seems to be being said here is might is right. Because Israel is the regional superpower being supported by the world superpower with their warships and their surveillance and everything else, and their political backing, making a mockery of democracy, vetoing vast majorities of countries in opposing resolutions, and even vetoing calls for a ceasefire of all things, not even allowing this, because for whatever reason, bloodletting, the massacre must continue. We need to wipe out these people because these people are not even you're talking about moving to another place. Even those the routes out of Gaza are being bombed. These people have been given a choice. The Palestinians, the choice is die, and that's the only choice. So what they can do is they can only do the one other thing in the face of that one choice, is to fight back. And so you're seeing people doing that, and in the process. So the question I wanted to ask actually a while back, but I'll leave you with it maybe. And this was asked by James O'Brien on his show. Actually, I think is a great question. If Hamas were hiding among Israeli civilians in Israel, would Israel be pursuing the same policy, or would it find a different way to get these guerrillas out of the civilian areas? Don't have to answer this question. I think the answer is obvious. It would not be doing this.
I think I do have an answer.
Go for it.
I think the answer is that when Israel would tell them would tell the people inside to evacuate, they would jolly well listen.
Because they know they would be allowed back. So that's not really an answer, Josh. So this is not really an answer.
It is an answer.
The point here is that it would not be indiscriminately, but it would not give 1 hour notice and taking down a whole block of residences. It would not be firing missiles at hospitals. It wouldn't be cutting off water supply and electricity, restricting food, restricting humanitarian aid. It wouldn't be doing any of these things if these same guerrilla tactics were being carried out within Israel itself. So I think there's a lot. I agree with the Jars, actually. There's probably a lot to discuss, and it's probably good to discuss it.
Yeah, Doctor, just one last thing, Josh, before you go, because I'm going to get Autumn on now. But this notion that the Palestinian civilians somehow don't leave the buildings that are being bombed because they've been warned to leave. But guess what, Josh? What you just said, they would jolly well get out, which basically implies that if I was living in a house and I received a warning that I'm going to fire a bomb in your house and kill everyone or destroy that building, I would just sit there tight with my kids and my wife and my family and my grandparents and everybody else. And I would just sit there and wait for this bomb to come. Quite frankly, I think it's bloody well insulting. And Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, even the United Nations, and countless other organizations that have investigated the way that Israel interacts with the Palestinian people, they say that it deliberately, at times, deliberately targets civilians. So so when you say things like they would jolly well get out of the building, I find that really, quite frankly, insulting. Because for several reasons. Number one, can you imagine, can you conceive that a Palestinian building apparently has Hamas operatives in there, and then the Israelis phone the people in the building and they say, we're going to bomb that building in an hour's time. And guess what, Josh? First of all, you're assuming that the civilians don't bother to leave. And secondly, you assume that the Hamas fighters are not going to leave either. Everybody's just going to sit tight and wait for the bomb to come in. Does that even make sense to you, Josh?
That's a good point.
Yes, exactly. So look, Josh, we have to call a spade a spade. What is happening? And look, you know what it is, Josh? This is not anti-Jewish or anti-this or anti-anything. These are often politicians in Israel who, most of whom actually are atheists. They don't even believe in Judaism. And they are conducting what is widely accepted now and fits the definition of ethnic cleansing and genocide, and removing an indigenous people who have thousands of years of history with that land. These are Semitic people as well. And they are systematically being killed. When people like the Prime Minister or the President of Israel says that we are fighting human animals, this is how they view these people. This is what justifies the mass killing of these people. And so all I'm saying to you is, Josh, these phone calls and these warnings being given, it doesn't even make sense that the families wouldn't leave. And more importantly, the very Hamas fighters that apparently are being targeted would also sit there tight and wait for those bombs and missiles. It doesn't even make common sense, Josh. But anyway, look, Josh, we'll continue this conversation.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, please think about that, and we'll have a conversation about that next time. But thanks for coming on, Josh.